Welcome to the next tutorial in the series Python Made Easy for Beginners. This tutorial is brought to you by ByteVista, an IT consulting firm. The topic for today is variables, operators and data types. I am using PyCharm. It is my preferred integrated development environment. I talked about installing it in the first tutorial. After installing PyCharm, you should click File, New Project, and then give the project a title. After that, make sure that you select the base interpreter. I am using Python 3.7. It is not the latest version, but there is no syntactic difference between 3.7 and the latest version 3.8. So after selecting your interpreter, click Create. I have already created a project, so I will not click Create. After creating a project, right click the project, select New, then select Python file. Give your file a name. I'm going to call this var2 tutorial, and then press enter. The topic again is variables, operators and data types. Before we start, let me say something about what I have just written. This is a comment. It starts with a hashtag. The interpreter will ignore everything that comes after the hashtag. It ignores the text after the hashtag. We use comments to give more facts about a code or a segment of a code. In other words, comments are used for documentation. When you want to leave a note for you or another programmer, you use a comment. This is a single line comment. We also have multi-line comment, which you just type triple quotation marks. You can use double quotation marks or single quotation mark, and then multi-line comment. Again, the computer will ignore the text inside this comment. Now, a variable is a named memory location for holding data. It is analogous to a container that has a label. You can put different items inside the container, but you can only put one item at a time in the container. It is called a variable because the value that goes into the container, the values that go into the container can change. That's why it's called a variable. If the values do not change, then you have a constant. But Python does not have a clearly defined concept of constant, unlike some other languages, this Java and the C. Now, there are some rules in creating variables. A variable can have letters, numbers, and underscores. but a variable cannot start with a a number. Now a variable, when you create a variable, we say you declare a variable. For example, x. Well, while I call this equal sign, it is actually an assignment operator. X, this means the value 2 is assigned to the variable x. So this is how you declare a variable. You can declare another variable y, 5. In other words, 5, the value on the right is assigned to the variable on the left. Now when you are creating a variable, you cannot use certain keywords. There are some reserved keywords in Python. These words have specific meanings in Python. You cannot use them in creating variables. For example, you cannot use while, you cannot use input, you cannot use if, you cannot use def. There are many of them. These are reserved keywords that cannot be used in creating variables. Now your variable should be meaningful. For example, a variable x equals to 2 does not give us a context. It's not meaningful. But for the purpose of this tutorial, we will use it. Something like this is meaningful. Student age, I'll talk about this in a second. Now, there are two conventions in creating variables. You can use the camel case, where the name of the variable starts with a lowercase letter, and the next word starts with an uppercase. In other words, if you are combining two or more words, you start with the first letter of the first word should be lowercase, the first letter of the second word should be uppercase, and so on. This is one of the conventions. Other people separate the two words using underscores. It's a matter of preference. Both are acceptable. So student age is a meaningful variable. Once you see this, you know what it's about, whereas x is not so meaningful. Now, having defined a variable and also stated the rules for creating variable, let's look at some of the operations that we can perform on variables. Now, before we do that, take note that when I added the hashtag to these two statements, they turned gray. We say that what this means is that I have commented out those statements. If you run this program, these two lines will not be displayed, so the interpreter will ignore them. Alright, so what the operations we can carry out on a variable? You can carry out all the arithmetic operations on variables. You can create another variable z, and then you say x plus y addition. Then you can use the print function. A function is a block of reusable code that is used for performing a certain task. Okay, so print is a built-in function, and the z here is regarded as an argument. That's the value it needs, or what it needs to carry its function. Okay, so after doing that, to run your program, just click run, select run, and then select the program. So this is the console. That's where the results are displayed. So we have 7 here as the result. You can also say minus. You can also click here to run the program. In this case we have -3 because 2 minus 5. Let me change this to 5 now, and then change this to 2. Okay, so it will display 3. You can of course division / will give us 2.5. that is a float. A float is a data type that has, you know, decimal parts. You can store decimal parts in floating point variables. Now if you divide 2 integers, you will get a float. But if you don't want to get a number with decimal part, you put 2 double slashes and then you will have 2. So it will do away with the decimal part. And also you can say x mod y. That's the modulus operator. When you run this, you end up with 1. In other words, 5 divided by 2 is 2, remainder 1. X mod 1. So these are some of the operations we can carry out on variables. Now we will now talk about strings and some of the operations we can carry out on strings. Now a string is a collection of characters. That is what a string is, a collection of characters. And so we declare a cause, and then the characters must be enclosed in quotation marks. You can use single quotation marks or double quotation marks. So this is how to declare a variable. I've assigned the string, Python made easy for beginners, to the variable cause. So this is a string. There are many operations you can carry out on a string, like when we declare the variable. And since Python is not a static language, you can also declare this to store the value 4. But if we were writing a program in Java or C++, you would declare this variable like this: int cause, they assign the value. So you would specify the data type if you were writing a variable in, if you were writing a program in C++. But Python is not like that. It is soft typed. You don't declare the type of variable when you declare variable, but Python will know the type of variable from the value assigned to the variable. So for example, if you let's print this and see what it will give us. You see, it tells us that the cause is an int, but you notice that the fact that I've declared another variable means that that's why we said that the variable is like a container. It takes the current value inside there, and at this point I declared a string. When I declared a 4, when I assigned 4 to the variable cause, the value changed to integer. Okay, that's why it's called a variable. Okay, and then so that's how you can know the type of variable using the type operator. Now a variable, when you declare a variable, it is assigned an address in a computer's memory. Okay, for example, if you write print id, if you do this, this is the memory address. So whenever you declare a variable, the computer or your program, assigns a space in memory for the variable. Okay, so depending on the variable type, the amount of space assigned to the variable will vary. All right, so what are some operations we can carry out on variable? So let me create another variable, name. We can concatenate, we can concatenate variables. We can say print notice that I did not enclose name and course in quotation marks because they are variables, so there's no need to enclose them. Okay, so let's run this program. This is supposed to concatenate, in other words, join two strings together. So two strings are joined together, that's concatenation. Okay, so this is concatenation. That's one of the operations you can carry out on strings. Now let me create another variable, num equals 2, and then let me put num1, and let's run the program. We get an error. You cannot add a number to a string. So there's a bug, there's an error. You can't concatenate that. But if you insist on doing that, you have to convert the number to a string. This is what we call typecasting. So you type stir, S-T-E-R, and this will allow you to convert the number to a string. If you run this program now, the error will go away. So you have Peter and the 2. Okay, but ordinarily you cannot add a number, an integer, to a string. But however, you can multiply a string and a number. When you do that, you get it just 2 times. It will just display the string twice in this case. So these are some of the things you can do with a variable. Another thing is that you can call some functions to perform certain tasks on a variable. For example, I'm going to call a function called len, and then let me see. Indentation. Print len. When you do this, it will tell us that there are 30 characters in the string. Python made easy. So we are using len to do that. You can also do something like this. Course. These are all the functions you can call. For example, you can say you can call the upper function, and when you run it, it will turn everything to uppercase. Similarly, you can call lower, okay, and then the string will turn to lowercase. There are quite a number of functions you can use. There you can have title, and when you run this one, it will make every word, the first letter of every word will be turned to uppercase. So quite a number of things you can do with this. And you can also, there's something we call let's run this program. You can slice the string. It tells me P. Now this 0 here starts is the index of P. In programming, we count from 0. So the index of P is 0, the index of Y is 1, the index of T is 2, and so on. So if I change this to 3 now, or 5 rather, it tells me that the letter at index 5 is N. Then you can slice this by, you can do something like this, colon 5 inside square brackets, and when you run that, it displays this 5 is starting from 0 to 4. The letter at index 5 is not displayed. Okay, now since I didn't specify a starting point, it is assumed that I'm starting from 0. However, I can specify a starting point and then run this. It shows HON. Okay, so these are some of the operations that can be carried out on a string. That's it for today. Remember to visit our site bytevista.com for more tutorials and information on the services we provide. Have a good day till next time.